This week on Lather Talk, we're bringing you part 2 of our interview with Stephen Joyner of Dogwood Handcrafts. We'll talk about how he got into brush making, made a video for YouTube that went viral, and he'll tell us the origin of the Inception Brush. All this and more coming right up. So we're talking again with Stephen Joyner from Dogwood Handcrafts, and we wanted to find out a little bit about kind of how Dogwood Handcrafts started, but also Stephen has seen a lot of success on YouTube, in particular, decorative eggs. So let's start with that, Stephen. Tell us about kind of how decorative egg videos went viral.
Well, I guess it's a fairly recent thing, and I've been doing wood turning stuff for a long time, but for an even longer time, I've been doing YouTube. I got into YouTube in college, making videos about Minecraft, and then later I was making videos teaching physics and math and stuff like that. And it wasn't super huge or anything. I had like a few thousand people that watched it, and never really made any like money from it or anything. And then I started live streaming brushes a few years ago. Firstly, it was a tool for people that were buying them where they could kind of see like, oh, cool, this is like the creation of this thing that I am spending money on. And then it was kind of entertainment for frequent customers or friends, or, I think my family watches them sometimes. Never really a lot of traffic. We're talking like 5 or 6 people at a time at most. And then randomly over the summer, a friend of mine said, what's all the rage on YouTube right now is people making, because I work with the hybrid material a lot of the time, that's the wood and resin acrylic combination, making things out of that, like big things out of that, whether it's the tables or like bowls, or a big thing that I've seen a lot of is eggs. They call them dragon eggs because I guess it's like a fantastical version of what a egg would look like, unlike how they're portrayed in movies, where it's basically just like a charred bird egg. And so I made one randomly that's exactly the same material that is my normal stuff. It was like 4 inches long. It's just like a bigger blank. Didn't get a ton of activity on it. And so then I made a 4-inch egg out of the resin that I use with one of the crane flies, which is the replica of the Jurassic Park cane topper. And that's the same insect they use in the movie and everything. And they are native here. And I have like thousands of them at my house every year. So I had a whole bunch of them over the summer. So I put one in this egg and uploaded it. And for about a month, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, a lot of things happened really, really fast, where I was getting like the number of views went up exponentially every day. And not a slow exponential, but like a crazy one, where I went from getting like less than 100 views a day to more than 1 million views per day on this one video. And my channel went from 4,000 subscribers to it's now at 57,000 subscribers after all the craziness. And that was over about a 28-day period, where just every day it was more and more and more. And then one day it just fell off, and the algorithm had spoken. It was like, it went from being all across the world, primarily in Southeast Asia, to eventually making it in the United States on the front page of YouTube. I had my family and my coworkers calling me saying that they had seen my video on there. There was like 5-minute craft video, not the 5-minute craft, but like the 5-minute long craft video channels had copied it and re-uploaded it for their channels, I guess, to make money on it. It was everywhere. And so I started putting out more videos, because I was like, all right, you get about $100 per 1,000 YouTube views, I think. Is that right? Did I say that right? No. Sorry. It's $10 per 1,000. I think that's something like that. It's $1,000 per million. So whatever that divides to. And I was like, oh my God, I could like quit my job I mean, this would be amazing. I could just make these eggs and things for the rest of my life and whatever. And then it just tanked as quickly as it picked up.
Uh,
I was making videos to try to keep up the momentum, but it was gone. You know, the algorithm takes the one video and then the rest just don't get picked up. So that's what happened with that. But it's still, I mean, it's made a ridiculous amount of money, and I can't emphasize how little work I put into this. Like the video was, it was one of my earliest ones that I had produced, so it's not cut great. There was no narration. I just put like I had the sounds of all the equipment, and then I eventually put in a song because it was like a lathe going at 20 times speed with a fan in the background.
mhm.
Just sounds like a high pitched whirring. It's the most annoying sound ever. So it's not a good sound for a video. And and so, but I mean, it was a huge windfall for me in terms of like, I mean, it was just amazing. It was like winning the lottery,
Mhm.
but it's still getting like thousands of views per day. The original video is, and I haven't done anything with it. It's still
Mhm.
going. There's still people correcting me on things and criticizing me, or they all make the same joke. And I translate in Google every comment that comes in, and I mean, 90% of the comments are translated to, "Wow, I bet that mosquito is really dizzy. He's probably going to throw up." Like it, it's a it's a joke that crosses all lingual barriers.
That's it. That's
But
it.
yeah,
Everyone has to be a comic, right?
yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. Like I woke up every day, like rushed to my phone and felt like an internet celebrity, and it was, I mean, it was really cool. It's pretty much over now, but I'll always remember like that one, the literal 15 minutes of fame that I had.
Awesome. So obviously, you know a thing or two about turning turning objects, but brushes in particular. How long have you either been to woodworking or turning brushes in general?
Yeah, so I used to work on straight razors. I got into that to make the handles, the scales for them, and then I kind of moved into like working on the metal and stuff. And eventually, it wasn't really enjoyable for me anymore. And I had gotten a lathe to make pens because I had a coworker who was really into pens, who had kind of like showed me the ropes on that. And so a previous customer who is someone I'm still in contact with now, which is really cool. He still like participates in a lot of my releases. Had asked if I could make a brush handle to match his razor that he had commissioned, and so I was like, it's going to be a completely different from the pens, but I'll give it a shot. And so I got everything that I needed for that, and I mean, looking back now, it's a really bad looking handle. The finishing and everything on it was fine, I guess, but just like the shape of it, everybody's first brush handle kind of as a rule looks like crap, and mine was no exception. And I for a long time I put the lathe away after I moved and wasn't really interested in it anymore. And then kind of on Reddit, I I started, there was, I have a lot of friends in the shaving community and everything, and people had asked like, oh, it'd be cool if I could get this kind of handle with these colors, because at the time there was not a lot of people doing custom brushes. I mean, I mean, there's more now, I guess, but there just weren't as many, and so I had started making some for friends, and that's when I really got into the hybrid material that I do. I I'd gone to the woodworking store to pick up supplies for pens and for brushes and stuff, and I saw the hybrid ones, and it really like spoke to me as a medium. But I really wanted more flexibility out of it, more variation that you can't really get when you're just buying pre-made stuff. And so that's, I mean, it's been going crazy ever since then. Like ever since then, I have not been able to keep things in stock, which is it's crazy to think about. There's companies that like are, I make shaving soap with my girlfriend, and our shaving soap stays in stock for the most part, but the brushes sell out in like a matter of minutes. So it's crazy to see that kind of success on something that I'm just like making in my free time.
Oh, and before we forget, what is the name of your girlfriend's soap company?
So I do co-own and help with Southern Witchcrafts, which is shaving soap, aftershave, perfumes, bath soaps, and our line is always expanding, and we're always working on cool new things. So my girlfriend is Courtney. She is the creative genius behind that. She's been on John's show on the under the Lather Talk Instagram thing. She did a Ask Me Anything interview on Reddit that was very entertaining. I know since I have a stake in this, it's going to sound like aggrandizing or whatever, but she is a visionary and a genius in sense. And I don't say that lightly. There are very few people that whose products I've experienced that I feel that way about. And I try to be vocal about it because like, I think that endorsing someone and their ability is important to, like lift up their art and make it available for people. And every person says the same thing. She is doing things with sense that nobody else is doing. And I think that's really important. It's important to have a style and stand out and not just be doing what everyone else is doing. So it's really cool to be partnered with her on that stuff. And I can't emphasize how little I have to do with the creative part of the soap making. None at all. It's all her, and I just try to keep the ship running smoothly. And she's a very, very impressive lady. And I'm proud to say that I was the one that introduced her to wet shaving, and she really took the ball and ran with it. So
I forget if I told you when I spoke to you and Courtney last year, but I feel like here's a good place to share it. In that's when I first used. I forget which scent it was, but either way, first go with Southern Witchcraft soap. It helped me break my preconception about the tallow versus vegan thing, and I think that part was critical because like you might have sent me a sample actually, and I used it and actually did without looking too much into it, and only afterwards realized, oh wait, that wasn't tallow soap, and that kind of firmly put me on that path to like, okay, it doesn't matter. I might think, oh, vegans this way and tallow's this way. Like, no, that thing had to be like, if you didn't tell me, I would just tell everyone that was a tallow soap.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And that's, the formulation is all her doing. I try to give feedback on things, but I've never really been much of a software guy. I was always really more on the hardware side, like the brushes and razors and all that stuff. So it was a totally alien thing to me when we started it. But there's been a lot of advances that have been made in the field since we put our product out, and so in the future we plan to adapt it to kind of keep up with a lot of the like really really high end stuff that's come out. But I think at the time and still now it is it punches well above its pay grade, I guess, for what it costs and the ingredients and everything. She's done a great job of making something that is both very easy to use, but very, very high performance. And what you said about blurring the tallow vegan line is something that we hear on numerous occasions. And that's really, really cool. It's the greatest compliment that you can get as a vegan soap company is, I couldn't even tell. Yeah. So it's, you wouldn't, as a tallow company, want to hear, "Oh, this is just like a vegan soap," but the opposite is very flattering. So.
That's true.
We talk about this like being into being into food. A lot of like vegan oriented chefs will just be like, "Oh, you should taste this burger. It tastes just like beef," Yeah. And a lot of times you're like, no, it doesn't. Let's be objective. It doesn't, right?
Never have I ever heard this steak is remarkably like tofu. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Or things like that. I don't know even if it's a hot take. I think if you can't create a lather, then it's probably on you more than it is on the
soap. Yeah, and at the end of the day, almost anything that you can buy will be perfectly serviceable for 99% of people, barring some weird allergy or inability to to use the product. And at the end of the day, it's really just splitting hairs. All the soaps, the top end of the market is very crowded in performance. I really think that with most of the soaps, if you were to evaluate them blind, not knowing what they were, with no sense or anything, or any preconceived notions about the label or how it's been rated by someone else, there would be a lot of ties and a lot of, I don't really know which is better, or it's better on this day because I happen to do something slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, yeah, I mean, I just buy based on what I think smells the best because it all works fine for me personally. So I don't chase that, for at least for my own use. I don't chase the performance at the cost of everything else. But I understand people have different philosophies about it, and for some, the performance is the only factor, and the scent and packaging and everything else might be secondary. But it's very impressive to see companies that can really tie all that together and get the amazing performance with all the visual aesthetic and the smell in there as well. And Courtney has, she came to me and said, "Hey, I'd really like to try making some brushes for Southern Witchcrafts that would be more, like that spooky theme to them, because mine are definitely not that. Maybe a couple of them have been, but on the whole, it doesn't really fit in there." And I was amazed at how quickly she took to it. So this is a funny story that not a lot of people know about, but she used to take my scraps from brushes. Imagine it's like a big piece of plastic that had come off the bottom or the side or something, maybe like yay big. And she would put them on the lathe and just round them until they were a disc, and then drill holes in them and polish them as artisan buttons. And each one would take her like an hour or two to make. And I was like, this is not sustainable. Like, people are not going to pay like $50 for a single button. She was like, I don't care. They're amazing. And she would, if buttons came off of her clothes or for her work uniform, she would use buttons made of like my hybrid material. They would be, like a $50 button on her work uniform. And so from there, she was able to take that limited turning experience and put out brushes that, honestly look better than most people's first, 5-10 brushes. And she was able to pull off like complex pours and casts. She did some techniques that I have talked to seasoned brush makers about. I was like, oh yeah, she did this thing with it. I've never seen anyone do that before. And their minds are blown by that, that intuition that she had. So I know it seems like I'm excessively tooting both of our horns tonight, but some people do things that will really surprise you with their abilities. And so there's a lot of people clamoring for her to put out more brushes, but it's the sort of thing where the inspiration really has to be there. She doesn't want to make the same thing twice. She wants to really, flip all the preconceptions on their head every time and make something that's going to blow people away with its novelty. So I'm always encouraging her, like, hey, you should make more brushes. People are desperate for them, but So I think the more people she hears from, maybe the more likely it is that she'll put more stuff out there.
We previously talked about your love of kind of casting things into the actual brush, into the resin. And I think one story I'd love to hear about, or at least for you to share with folks, is the Inception Brush or Brushception.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. It's a logical extension of anything that you do that can be made in a meta way. Like, I used to make like computer type things in Minecraft. Everybody would always say, when are you going to make a computer in Minecraft that can run Minecraft? Like, people just love that Inception, like you say, that Russian doll nesting of things. And so once I had started putting things in brushes, it came up a lot. When are you going to make a brush in a brush? And honestly, I didn't think it was doable, for the reason being that, like, if you if you say take a badger brush and submerge it in water, look at all the air bubbles that come out of it. It's a lot, and it's a lot for the resin to deal with, filling in all those cavities. And then the other problem is you either have to put a regular size brush in a giant brush or make a tiny brush in a regular size brush. And so I opted for the latter of those. I turned a tiny Simpson Chubby style on a lathe out of the Paladin disco stock that they use, that a lot of people use, I guess, but they're popularized it. And I hand tied a 7mm synthetic knot that was just a total disaster. Like I took a good one and I cut pieces off and tried to cram it in there. I don't know how people do that. It was horrible. I fully expected that all the bristles were just going to shoot out of it as soon as I got it in the mold. And I live streamed that process of the turning it and everything. It was tiny. The thing is the size of almost a little bigger than like a pencil eraser. It's very small. And I cast it in my normal style, where I pour half clear, I put it in, then I poured the other half clear, and then I took more of the disco for the top, glued it together, and turned it in kind of with cast brushes. You can't always make them in the normal shape that you would, because you have to work around the object. Because if you hit the object, it comes too close to the outside, it's going to be a disaster. And then the shape of it will diffract the light and affect how the object looks. And so if you have something that's like perfectly spherical, it's just going to magnify it. But if you have something that's elongated, like a brush handle usually is, it's going to make it really like short and fat, basically, is how it looks. So the brush looks very, very chubby and very wide when it was made in a normal proportion. So in retrospect, that's something that I should have taken into consideration. And then at the Magard meet in 2018, I got a matching knot for it, and the brush in a brush is complete. And it was a crazy experience. The next thing to do with it, of course, is to cast it into a giant blank and make a 75. I have the 75mm knots, the Yaki monster knots. Make it a brush in a brush in a brush. And I just haven't had. I would need to use close to like a half to 3/4 gallons of resin for that, and I'd only get one shot at it.
Yeah.
And it's I haven't been courageous enough to do it. Maybe someday. I still have it. I bring it with me to all the shows.
Oh, nice.
Not shows, all the meets and all the events that we do. Everybody has their price, so like maybe someday I'll sell it, but I haven't had a it's really, really cool, and I don't want to make another one, so I've been hanging on to it until I get that offer that I can't refuse. So
$1 million.
I would definitely do it for that.
I would easily.
1 million.
And I'd make another one immediately after that. Okay.
Oh yes. Oh, how many can I put you down for?
I guess any vision for 2020 as far as maybe doing something different within the hybrid brushes. Maybe I know that like a lot of your brushes are kind of lean on a similar on one type of shape. Maybe possibility of like different shapes with it, or I don't know. I guess just like a general vision for 2020 for Dogwood Handcrafts. 2020,
I'm looking to really increase the amount that I'm able to do. I've really streamlined the process, and I have like a lot more ability to batch things than I did in the past. So I can do, whereas I used to do a brush a day at most, or on a weekend maybe 2, I can do now like easily twice that. I've done, I guess, was it last weekend, the weekend before, I did like 5 brushes in a day. And I think there was a time I did 7. So, it's a lot more than it used to be if you think of one a day. And so I'm really just trying to get them into the hands of everybody that wants them before I try to do anything too crazy. Because as it is, for Black Friday, I put up a wait list, and there was like 33 people that I had on that list. And so that was kind of like, okay, that's how many I can sell in one day if everybody has access. But I still get requests daily of when I'm going to do that again. So that clearly did not meet all the demands. And so I need to keep working to make sure that they're as available as possible. But I would like to get into, I mostly stick with the same wood. I'd like to try some other woods and see kind of how they do. See what I can do. Like, the shape thing, it's funny. The reason that I only usually do the same one or two shapes is that when I do other ones, people complain. And so I go back to doing that one. It used to be you put in an order. It still is. You put in an order for the colors you want, and I would just make whatever with that. But it's the few times that I experimented with doing other shapes, I had to do refunds and redo them because they wanted the ones that they saw in all the pictures.
Of course.
So it's kind of this self-propagating cycle that I've created where I did those early ones in that way, and now I kind of have to keep doing them like that to keep people happy. So, I guess that is what it is. I'd kind of like to work more with some non-hybrid stuff as well, just because it's nice to switch it up sometimes. And the process is so much shorter and easier when it's like all acrylic or all wood, and I have all these abilities that I've learned that it's a shame to not, to only use them in that one thing. So in that way, I'd like to do more of the eggs. I've been doing like improving my bowls and things like that. It's always nice to do something different. Anybody that does the same thing every day likes to break out of it every once in a while, and it's very refreshing, and it in a way can improve your skills at your main job. So
question before we sign off, for budding brush makers, is there one piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were starting out that you would share with someone wanting to get into brush making?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think this necessarily is limited to that. With anything that you're creating, your first X number amount, your first 5, 10, 20, and some things even your first 50 are not going to be worth selling. It takes a significant amount of time to go from nothing to this has value. And so what the mistake that I have made many times in my life is thinking that I did something and now this is like the best it's going to get, and I should try to profit on it, or I should present this as a finished product. But design in art and anything else, my belief is that it benefits from iteration. And so the more times that you do something, it makes sense, the better it's going to get. So the takeaway is do not sell your first brush. Don't sell your first 5. And if you can hold off until your first 10 or 20, by then they will start to be good enough to sell. But it's hard. You see it with rose tinted glasses. Your first thing, like, wow, I made this, but it's not fair to your customers. It's not fair to you. Hold off. Improve yourself as an artist and a craftsperson, and let your style start to emerge from your work, rather than not everybody is going to be Harper Lee that writes To Kill a Mockingbird and then waits 80 years, and that was like that one hit wonder is good enough. Odds are that's probably not going to be you. You're probably going to need some practice. You're going to need time to improve, and you need to give yourself time to fail before you can improve. There is no knowledge and improvement without that, making tons of mistakes and learning from them. So that's in anything in your life. I think that is an important thing to do. And it's hard to make yourself hold off when everyone else is telling you this is great, you should monetize it. It's usually, that you might be able to, but it's in your best interest to hold off and do it when the time is right.
Awesome. Well, I think that's some really valuable advice. Like you said, it's applicable to really any creative endeavor. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, Stephen, I want to thank you for your time, for coming to talk to me and Gerard today. It was great kind of just hearing funny stories, hearing inspiring stories, and just kind of a little bit behind the scenes of what's going on, in your work at Dogwood Handcrafts. So I do want to wish for you and Courtney for Southern Witchcrafts that 2020 is a successful year, and that I'm just really looking forward to see what you guys have to put out in the coming months.
Yeah, same, and likewise to you guys with the show. It seems like it's doing really good, and there's definitely a void that you guys are filling, and I'm glad that that it's you guys doing it and not somebody who isn't good at it. So there you go. But I appreciate the kind words, and hopefully, hey, I'd love to see Courtney on here sometime. She's a character. So, and I look forward to see the other guests that you guys have for this year.
All right. Well, that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you for listening to Lather Talk, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Lather Talk. To see Stephen's brushwork, please check out Dogwood Handcrafts website or on Instagram at Dogwood Handcrafts. You can find John at Latherhog on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can find Gerard on Instagram at HeyGerardShaves. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and we will catch you next episode.